Now, here's the hosts of Top Story, KLIXcast and Jill Skeen.
1310.com, and when you view on KLIXcast, our show is now on video. So you get to see us in all our glory. Oh, happy day. Oh, lucky us.
You'll notice
the beauty of radio was you didn't have to be seen.
And now things have changed.
Oh, happiness. I'm so happy.
Now I can kind of sneak back in here in the little corner, and people can't really see me.
And I'm like,
however,
I know.
But I aimed the camera specifically for that.
I'm sure you did.
Yes, I did.
I'm surprised it wasn't an up-close HD. Thank you very much.
Well, that could change.
I'd be like, wow, does she have broccoli in her teeth?
At any rate, hey, welcome to Monday morning, the most depressing day of the week. It has to be.
Especially a rainy Monday morning, because it'd be nice to sleep in.
It would. But I kind of like this kind of weather. I know that it's not good for the farmers. There's still a lot of beans out on the windrows and such. But, I just kind of like this kind of weather. It's just... I do.
Well, it's kind of nice, and it doesn't make you feel guilty if you're not outside on a nice day. Growing up in Ohio, when there was a nice day, you always went outside because it was a nice day.
No matter what you had to do inside. Huh?
Yeah, you couldn't waste a nice day. I mean, October to April, it's like this in Ohio, at least in Columbus.
Interesting stuff.
Not really, and then it's just on a nice day, everyone's outside.
We have Randy Staples coming up with the Idaho Political Update. That'll be at 8:40. We do have some news to talk about this morning, and one issue, the beheading, of course, in Oklahoma City last Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Was it an act of terrorism, or was it just an act of workplace violence? So we'll talk about that.
Yeah, and also I was out at the farmer's market this weekend. I'm going to do a shout out to Lyle. Lyle came by. He was a loyal listener and tried my soup, and he told me that he didn't agree with anything that I ever said. But then as he was walking away,
liked your soup.
He said the soup's delicious, and I said, see, Lyle, we can agree on something.
There you go.
So it was rainy and bad. I did not stay the whole time. The winds came up, tents were blowing, things were freezing. And interestingly enough, and it was raining, people would run up, go to their favorite veggie vendors and leave. They weren't like walking around shopping. So the one day I make 2 huge pots of soup. They
were a shopper like me. They knew what they were after. They stopped, they went for it, they got it, and they left.
When it was raining, I'd beg people to come under my tent. Come on out from the rain and have soup. So they did. But I had a lot of soup. It's now in the freezer. I gave some to neighbors. Yes, the time I make 2 pots of soup. So I'm sorry if I wasn't there when you ran out there, but honestly, because I could have stayed out, no problem. But was anyone going to buy a cookbook?
Yeah,
I don't think so. It was not a good day.
That's one thing about weather this time of year and having outdoor activities. It's a roll of the dice. It's a roll of the dice anytime, but specifically this time of year.
I'll be back the last weekend in October.
I remember, was it 2 or 3 years ago, we had 2 or 3 inches of snow on October 10th. So now we're supposed to get up into the low 60s today. And this week, I guess, is supposed to be chilly. So,
well, it's good soup weather.
Go
buy my cookbook and make some delicious soup.
Benito made that remark this morning. He said, man, it's good soup weather. I mean, this is the time for soup. That's what he said.
We eat soup all year round. We really do.
Yeah.
Anyway.
At any rate, we do have some news to talk about this morning. One of the more interesting ones, I thought, was the Idaho State Police continuing to receive reports of people getting calls from someone claiming to be from the ISP. The number appearing on the caller ID shows up as an actual number from the Idaho State Police, but it is a scam.
You wonder, how do they get those numbers?
Oh, that, yeah, they have.
Terrible.
I mean, with technology these days, you can do just about anything. This scammer appears to be targeting students and professors, as well as foreign nationals, and is telling the person that they call that they have an arrest warrant and that the person needs to pay money to clear the warrant or face arrest or deportation. Unfortunately, the calls that are being received appear to be based outside the borders of the U.S., according to Major Clark Rollins. There is little that law enforcement can do to stop these scammers, but the Federal Trade Commission has set up a website to compile complaints to establish patterns of fraud and abuse. So if you get a call from someone claiming to be from the ISP or any other law enforcement or government agency for that matter, and they are asking for money, do not send any money.
Well, wouldn't
Do
you know
not
if you had a
provide
warrant
any-
or not? I mean, but really, would you sort of wonder, like,
Well,
I don't have a
yeah.
warrant. I haven't been arrested.
Yes.
Like, is there any common sense
Yes.
involved here?
No,
No.
there isn't.
I know.
There isn't.
It's sad.
So just scream at them, yell at them, call them bad names and hang up, or just hang up.
Because even
they're
if you
just
give them the
scammers.
number
Yeah.
to the authorities, they can't track them, can they?
No, even
Yeah.
if you get a call, and this is what I do. If I get a call from someone who I may legitimately owe money to, and they want money right then and there, I don't give it to them. I say, you send me an invoice
Oh, yeah.
or a registered letter or something. I'm not going to give you anything over the phone. And if it's legitimate, they will understand that. If it's not legitimate, they're going to hang up and you're never going to hear
Well,
from them
even for
again.
charities, We always
Absolutely.
say you have to send us something in writing.
I get calls I finally abandoned my regular phone number that I've
I
had
can't.
for 30-some years.
I can't.
Because all it was telemarketers and people from, they claim, charities. And it's always the blind veterans or the injured soldiers or something like that to tug at your heartstrings, and they want the money, and it's for the. You don't know that those groups could very well be legit, but anybody can call
but
under
some of
that
them
name.
they found out aren't legit, and that's the
Absolutely.
sad
And
thing.
I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
just don't give
I know.
anybody anything over the phone. Even if it's legit, if you want anything from me, you're going to have to send me a legitimate invoice.
And that in itself might be hard for Kelly to pay. No, I'm
That's
kidding.
right. It will.
That
But
wallet, very, very tight.
in fact, I think everybody knows my idea. Telemarketers are one step below ISIS.
Don't even say, because you're okay. I was going to
say
say, don't say a legitimate business, because
no,
the poor
I'm not.
things.
I was going to say used car salesman, but
So, yeah, come on.
even used car salesmen, they're just people trying to make a living.
Try
like
to
you
make
and
a
me,
living.
And I bought
Okay.
from used car salesmen, so I really can't diss them.
You could
but,
say below Wall Street.
Well, yeah, or I
There
used
you
the
go.
ISIS.
There
Okay,
you go.
okay. So I'm sorry if you're into telemarketing. It's, as far as I'm concerned, not a legitimate way anymore to sell. It's just a good way to screw somebody out of their money, and that's how I feel.
Well, you wonder
about it.
how effective it is. That's the thing. It's amazing.
Especially anymore.
Amazing. I know.
Any telemarketing call that I ever got, I just hang up. And I don't care what they're trying to sell or what service they have. I'm sorry, you're not going to sell me over the phone. What's more, if I figure out who you are, and even if you're legit, I'm not going to buy from you because you use telemarketing schemes, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Call me a grumpy old man if you
We
want.
do.
I don't care.
You
I know
are.
you
You're
do.
a grumpy old man.
I know you do.
I know.
And that's fine. I wear that badge proudly.
Okay,
The
fine.
older I get, the grumpier I get. So that's just the way it is.
God help me. God help me.
George Clooney shouldn't be grumpy anymore. He has married a beautiful woman, Amal Alamuddin. Okay. They stepped out for the first time as husband and wife Sunday and will cap their lavish weekend wedding with an official civil ceremony today.
Well,
all of you-
he vowed that he would never marry again after he divorced in 1993. We always heard that. He dated these waitresses for 2 years, then he'd break up with them, or an actress for 2 years. And then he finally met someone who was his equal. She is a high-powered civil rights attorney, very world-renowned reputation, and he met her through his civil rights work. And finally, ta-da, he finally met someone who he could maybe have a conversation with, George. She's
There
also
you go.
17 years younger. That always helps. So
Yeah.
anyway,
So anyway,
It's amazing.
George
I'm
Clooney's
glad
married.
they're happy.
Oh
there
my
you
gosh,
go.
me too.
It'd be nice if it was a
Me
woman
too.
close to his decade,
I don't
but whatever.
understand why George Clooney didn't marry Kim Kardashian. I mean, wouldn't that have been a marriage made in heaven? I don't know.
How do you come up with this stuff? Jeez, oh man. Anyway, he's off the market. Yeah.
Okay, and now you said you wanted to talk a little bit about this World Cup thing. No, I'm sorry, Ryder Cup. The Ryder Cup.
Kelly actually said to me, "Is the Ryder Cup about golf?" Because they didn't happen to mention it in the story. And I said, well, there were 2 golfers in the picture of the article. But yes, the U.S., the World Cup, it comes about every 2 years. It's Europe against the U.S., and Europe won again. This is the 3rd time in a row. Actually, the U.S. was pretty much slammed this time, 16.5 to 11.5 points victory.
Wow.
So it's actually fun to watch. They have twosomes, foursomes, singles, and they score points, and you either win the match, you have the match, or
well, the closest
whatever.
This article got to mentioning anything about golf was the PGA. You've mentioned the PGA.
Does Phil Mickelson ring a
that
bell,
could be
or
anything.
Rory
Not to me.
McIlroy, the best player in the world?
I am not a golf aficionado.
It's from Scotland.
This is a poorly written article. They should have realized that not everyone reading the article was a golfer and would know all this stuff. And it is very arrogant of them. It is arrogant of them to think that you have to be.
Here you go.
You should automatically know all of the terms.
As soon as Donaldson's ball was next to the cup, he removed his cap. Where do you think the ball in a cup would be? That doesn't even make sense.
Ball in a cup.
You are an embarrassment to your gender.
Hey, I'm not a golfer.
You don't have to play soccer to know the World Cup. Anyway, the U.S. lost the Ryder Cup again. And Tom Watson was the coach. And so you have to wonder what's going on. Although Phil Mickelson was a little controversial because he said, I think we should go back to what we did in 2008 when Paul Azinger was the captain. And you have to wonder, what did they do in 2008, Phil? But he didn't elaborate. So there you go. 3 Ryder Cups in a row. Yes, it's golf, Kelly class.
All right. Well, now I know.
And the U.S. lost to Europe again.
Coming up, we're going to talk about Lawrence Denny, who, if he is elected as Secretary of State,
that's right,
wants to institute fingerprinting for voters. What do you think about that? Is that going overboard for voter identification, or is that the next logical step in the world in which we live?
And how much does that cost the state?
And we'll be talking about that next right here on Top Story. 7360300 is the number to call. 7360300 is the number to call, and we are back. And the folks at Far More of Idaho want you to know that they have the new Certiset system. You've heard us talking about this. It's no moving pipe, no borders, no spraying around the field to make the border for the pipe to go in, no more spraying the borders to keep the pipe clear, no more costly labor to move pipe. Ask them about Certiset. This is the next step up in technology from some of the aluminum pipe that we are so familiar with today. You ask them about this, and this might be, especially now that we're kind of ending the irrigation year, we'll be coming up on a new one next year, so you'll have a chance to kind of maybe change the way you do things from now until next spring. This will give them a lot of time to do that. So give them a call at 324-3341. You can also get them online at farmoreofidaho.com. And tell them that Kelly and Jill sent you, Far More of Idaho.
Right.
So tell us about Mr. Denny, Jill, because I know you're the one who pointed out this story to me.
Well, I mean, you see, ever since I think it was Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act that was deemed no longer relevant by the Supreme Court, the day that happened, literally, Republican states across the country have been instituting stricter and stricter voter ID laws and disenfranchising many people. Actually, they just said the voter rights laws in Virginia might disenfranchise 200,000 people. But you see a pattern of this. And of course, Lawrence Denny, who's going to run for Secretary of State in Idaho, he has an idea that he thinks because voter fraud is so prevalent in our state, which we had Evan Frazier on. I mean, I think he talked about voter fraud in the 70s, but we haven't really seen much of any anywhere. I think they might have had 31 cases across the country and 1 billion votes or something. It's not a high problem. But what he wants to do is he wants to have machines where voters would be subject to fingerprinting. One of his top priorities is to work on measures to enhance the security of the election process, such as new technology that scans either signatures or fingerprints. There is a cost for increased security, and I hope to work with the legislature to start the appropriate process for implementation as soon as possible. During my campaign, I've emphasized the importance of ensuring the security of the ballot and the integrity of the process. So, and people are like, well, what's next? Do you blood test, urinate for election day? But I mean, honestly, if you don't have a problem, and I think the representative, I think it was the Secretary of State of the Republican guy in Pennsylvania when Mitt Romney was running, saying we're going to help Mitt Romney win because we voter ID laws check. I mean, that's their strategy. If you can't win an election, let's disenfranchise people. So it's not a huge problem. It's not. I mean, in Idaho, you show them your ID, you show whatever. But the fact that in some states they're accepting the NRA ID and they're not accepting student IDs, who are you trying to disenfranchise? So I think our election process should be as open as possible. It concerns me if he becomes Secretary of State. What do people think? And how much would that cost? You're going to fingerprint every person? No, really, how much would this cost? We're just flush with money in Idaho. We just waste money on lawsuits that we know we're going to lose. We've changed the signs of all the speed limits. Let's institute fingerprinting scans at every election booth. Can you imagine? How much could that possibly cost? And for what? It's not a huge problem. Obviously, we're doing something right. Even Ben Yasursa, there's not a problem here. So I don't understand. It's obviously a way, and when you look at the states that are instituting these, it's a way to disenfranchise voters. And I think shame on him. I think the U.S. should be expanding votes, not trying to limit the days. In Ohio, they're trying to limit the days for early voting, trying to eliminate Sunday voting because that's when the blacks would go. They would go after church. I mean, when you see things like this, you see how they're disenfranchising Americans. Shame on us for doing that. And I think it's ridiculous. And how much could this possibly cost the voters?
So what do you think? Are we going one step too far here by fingerprinting voters and requiring fingerprints to vote? Or is it just preventative measures for maybe what the future has to bring? So, you could go either way with this. 7360300 is the number to call. I'm going to try this one here. Top story, you are on the air. Good morning.
Yeah, I don't think we need to fingerprint people. I think what we should do is take a lesson maybe from the third world countries. I think when everybody votes, they ought to just get their thumb dipped in some purple ink that lasts a couple days and be done with it. I think the biggest problem people are worried about is multiple voting. You get some places in the Midwest and Southeast and Northeast, and I don't think we have it around here as much. But
I don't think we have it at all.
Well, we don't know that, but I mean, I would hope that we don't have that, but I mean, nobody can be 100% sure. It's kind of like, to me, it's like putting cameras on the bodies of police officers. You just do it. It's preventative. It makes things easier. If everybody walked around with a purple thumb that voted, then you wouldn't have to worry about it, right? I mean, everybody would be pretty happy with that, I would think.
You're serious about a purple thumb? Are you kidding me? It's
Why not?
the U.S. Are you kidding me?
Well, I know, but if we're
oh
really...
my gosh.
Well, why is that bad?
I don't know if this is so much about multiple voting as it is maybe non-citizens trying to vote.
Well, I'm trying to think, people, the reason that they say this is they don't want people voting more than once. And I think that, what about something clear? And then everybody has an ultraviolet thing that you put your hand underneath, and if it glows, then you're out. I mean...
Like those stamps they put on you when you go into the disco or go out of the disco and then try to get back in. Hey, now you're talking. You might be up onto something there.
It's not a problem. Why are we doing this? Millions of dollars for this?
It's called preventive measures.
Oh, no, it's called trying to prevent the electorate. And look what's happening across this country.
We'll be right back. 7360300 is the number to call here this morning on Top Story. Welcome back. Before we get back to our conversation, if we need to do fingerprinting now to dissuade voter fraud in the state of Idaho, I just wanted to tell you that the folks at Clearwater Power Equipment now have expanded to the Twin Falls area with their store at 252 Washington Street, where General Building Supply used to be. They have the largest power equipment dealer in the Wood River Valley and have had for over 10 years. Now they've expanded to this area with their Husqvarna line, the full line of outdoor power products. Husqvarna servicing dealers have both the experience and the knowledge to know outdoor power equipment inside and out. So if you've got any questions about Husqvarna or Echo, stop by, give them a call, 734-7767. You'll also notice that it's raining a little bit today. You might be thinking, what am I going to do with my big self-propelled lawnmower? How am I going to store it this year? Give them a call. They have a storage plan, and they'll explain it to you. 734-7767 or 252 Washington Street South. That is Clearwater Power Equipment. All right, so our conversation today, 736-0300. Top story, you're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Kelly and Jill. You know, I kind of agree with we need to have something. I'm more worried about people that are influxing into our country that aren't here legally, have fake IDs, everything else, and they're influencing our government. And that to me is just wrong all the way around. They're already here illegally, and then they're influencing our government. We have to do something. You use ID for everything under the sun. Getting liquor, getting on a plane, getting anywhere. All of a sudden, it's a big deal to use one to vote. I don't get it.
Well, actually, we're not talking about actual voter our ID cards. We're talking about fingerprinting.
Fingerprinting.
Yeah. I mean, that's extreme because I'm a mechanic by trade. My work has a fingerprint check in, check out. It doesn't work for me. I can put my finger on it all day long. My fingerprints are so worn out, it don't work.
I see. So you don't think fingerprints will work, but you think we need to do something.
We need to do something, yes. I mean, I kind of like the blue thumb. I like the blue thumb thing. That works.
Oh, jeez.
I kind of like the infrared stamp on the hand.
We do something.
That would work great, too.
Yeah.
You go to the thing, they ask you, you write your name in. There's one name per address. That's it. You come in and you go, it's the same address? No, you've already voted. And people have to register to vote. They don't just go and, you can register that day. But, I think if you're illegal, I think the last thing you're going to do is sit there and go vote and show up and come out of the shadows. I'm sorry. They're worried about being deported, but it's not an issue. I think literally 31 cases of voter fraud out of 1 billion votes. This is not a huge problem. Why are they making it a huge problem? Because if you look at the laws across the state, and it's in Republican states, because they are losing their electorate. Their electorate are old white men like my father who are going to die off, and they want to limit blacks, women, Hispanics, and that's what they're doing. And students in North Carolina.
How would a fingerprint or even ID eliminate the fingerprinting?
Fingerprinting. How would you even institute that? How would you then have to get your fingerprint on the register first to even know that is your fingerprint? Can you imagine the money it costs? But what you're doing in other cases, it is limiting voter fraud. Some people do not drive. Some people have never flown. Some people are like the 93-year-old woman who was interviewed. She can't vote because she doesn't have an ID, and then to go buy one, or it's so burdensome.
Actually, here's the issue that I see. Here's the issue that I see with fingerprints. I think that many may not have a problem with some sort of extreme ID such as fingerprints. I think more people would have a problem with giving the government our fingerprint, because I know there are a lot of people who won't get a concealed weapons permit because they have to go through a background check, and to do that you have to give their fingerprints. I think that could be one of the
issues. Well, you'd have to get fingerprints from everyone in Idaho?
Every voter.
Before.
I guess you would, yeah.
And then come on.
Logistics could be a problem.
Money.
736-0300. Top story. You're on the air. What do you think?
Good morning, Kelly. Good morning, lovely Jill.
Good morning.
To go on the concept of the two previous callers that he said it's a preventative measure. Why don't we do preventative measures on everything, like infrastructure and everything? But I think this is just to suppress the voters. This is all it is. It's just making excuses to oppress the Hispanics, the older people, the black people, the women.
It's true, and the students, yeah.
Yep.
You know,
the Republican wins.
your phone sounds a lot better today.
It does.
Well, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for calling in. But
Hey.
no, and they're admitting it, and that's why there's lawsuits against it. And you know what? We should have more open voting as opposed to trying to limit it so you can win an election.
Coming up, we have Randy Staples with the Idaho Political Update here on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX. 7360300, always the number to call. 7360300 is the number to call. Coming up at 9 o'clock, we will be talking about the OKC beheading, if it was act of workplace violence or an act of terrorism. So we'll get your opinion on that. Right now, we have Randy Staples with the Idaho Political Update. Randy is with us each Monday right here on Top Story. You can also read his daily blog at ridenbaugh.com. You can also subscribe to his weekly update at the same place. Good morning, Randy.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, nice to have you back. As an unbiased, I always email Randy a list of stuff we want to talk about in the morning. So to just kind of get started here, as an unbiased political analyst,
That's a big pressure there, right there, Randy.
do you think that Sherry Ibarra regained any political points in her first debate with Jana Jones for Idaho's Superintendent of Public Instruction after all of her previous missteps?
Well, she may have done herself some good. Whether it's enough is really hard to know, and I think that it's probably a mistake to absolutely write her off just because she does have that R behind her name, and that's a powerful thing in Idaho. It's not something that I would write off too lightly, but it's whether it was enough, that may be another matter. But it did seem to me that in the debates, she came across as a pretty solid education professional. She seemed to be pretty well informed, and actually her answers on a lot of the questions were not terribly different from her opponent, Jana Jones.
They just weren't very detailed. I actually went to the debate, and like I said, during the debate, I actually heard some woman behind me say, it sounds like she's running for Miss Idaho. And then when two women were walking out behind them, I heard them say, I don't know what she stands for. I don't know what she said. And then I asked, do you mind if I ask who you're talking about? And they said Sherry Ibarra. I mean, it was like a lot of, I don't know. There wasn't a lot of detail in her answers.
Well, it sounded, I think she has not worked through what she wants to say in front of audiences a lot, and that probably matters a good deal. If you're listening to it with a pretty good awareness of sort of education speak, and like any area, there's jargon that educators use as any other group of people does, and I don't think that she's worked through some of what she has to say with a general public as thoroughly as she might have, so as to reach them that well. She struck me as being reasonably well informed, and her answers were not bad, and in a lot of cases were actually fairly similar to her opponents. But the downside is that, she probably doesn't put them together in a way that people are going to quickly get. And that's something that really only comes with doing a lot of campaigning, which she hasn't done.
Right.
She's also not an experienced campaigner, whereas her opponent is. And I wonder if she's trying to get through this campaign time without what you might... I know a lot of them hire consultants, and they have people who travel with them and say, okay, now say this and don't say this. I wonder if she has one of those, because I know she's trying to do this on a bare bones budget.
Well, and that's one of the things that you need money for. That kind of professional help doesn't come cheap. And so far as I can tell, no, she doesn't really have that kind of help that some other candidates might get. But it's the sort of thing anyway that a candidate, if they develop enough experience and they talk with enough people and they get used to what people need to hear in terms of how they need to hear it, that candidates can kind of figure out for themselves. And she probably could do that, but she hasn't done that level of intensive campaigning around the state or talking with a large enough variety of people to really be able to reach them that well.
Right, unlike her opponent.
Unlike her opponent, who has done a lot of that. She's run statewide intensively once before, and she got started early on and has run intensively ever since this year.
It seemed like, Sherry, I don't think anyone questioned, all of her degrees and whatever. It just didn't seem like she was able to step into the job right away, where to me it seemed like Jana could step in and you didn't worry about it.
And there is quite a difference between doing it at in the classroom level and teaching it and administering at a particular school and administering a statewide school system. It's kind of it's really sort of the difference in military terms of somebody who's out on the front and engaging in the battle versus somebody who's at the Pentagon trying to direct the whole thing.
Well, we just had Tom Luna.
It's just very different kinds of work.
Right, and we just had Tom Luna, who's never taught. He's never been in the classroom, even took his college degree in weights and measures online. So, I mean, you don't really have to have that background, obviously, to be the superintendent, because he clearly had none of that.
Well, and Jana Jones does have some of that background. She has been a classroom teacher. She has worked somewhat at that level, but she does have the advantage of having also worked at the state level.
Right.
And as she's pretty quick to point out, she's familiar with how you deal with school districts around the state, the fact that they're very different, that you have various education funding formulas that you have to deal with. There are all kinds of state and federal requirements that the state is supposed to do. Really, the State Department of Education, which is what the Superintendent of Public Instruction administers, is a very technical agency, and it does something that nobody else in the state does, which is to manage technically all of the money, the rules, the regulations, and a lot of these kinds of things that the various school districts around the state have to deal with. And that's something that none of the school districts individually really have to deal with.
It seems like this year a lot of the candidates, for instance, on Friday, we interviewed Nels Mitchell, who's the Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate against Jim Risch. It seems like a lot more of the candidates this year have kind of realized, oh man, there's a large block of independent voters out there who are not loyal to either Republican or Democrat that a lot of them seem like they're going after now. Is it just me, or have they kind of realized it in the last couple of years so much more than they had before?
Well, I think that they've recognized that and I think they have recognized for a while that there are a bunch of independent voters out there. Surveys have repeatedly shown that to be the case. The problem has been that those voters, pretty overwhelmingly, those who do go out and cast votes, which is obviously not all of them, but those who do cast votes, disproportionately, they have been voting Republican. But the question there is, what would it take to switch some of those candidates from a Republican vote to a Democratic vote? And that's what nobody has a perfect answer to. But certainly if you're going to go after the independents, there are certain ways that you can try and do that. I know that Nels Mitchell's campaign, certainly for one, has been trying to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's switch from politics here a little bit and go back to something that kind of has me concerned. And I ran into this story last week and even pulled it out for possible discussion on the show. We just never got to it. But that is the U.S. Forest Service proposal that people taking pictures of a commercial nature in the wilderness areas of the state of Idaho will have to get a permit. And I noticed that you had quite a summary on that in your update this morning. And coming from your background from news gathering and newspapers and such, you looked like it was easy to tell that you were quite biased against something like this. I
really think it's one of the more foolish things that I've seen the Forest Service do. It's really pretty remarkable. This is what we're talking about here is it includes Idaho, but it extends throughout the Forest Service. And there have been, and this particular story actually initially got started The first reports on it, I believe, came out of Portland, Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
And but some of the biggest conflicts occurred in Idaho with Idaho Public Television, in which they were required to obtain. I think the permit cost $1,500 to just go out to the wilderness and shoot video pictures. The idea of wilderness is supposed to be that that's an area where people can come and don't stay or don't leave a trace behind of themselves. But if all you're doing is taking pictures that don't change the environment that you're in, it's a little hard to see why there would need to be any kind of a permit or requirement at all. If you're damaging the area, that would be a different matter. But if you're not damaging the area, it's a little hard to see why that should be a requirement or why that should be an issue at all. And that has become a big issue around the West. There have been a lot of members of Congress, both Republicans and Democrats, who have filed complaints with the Forest Service about it. Lots of news media have started to weigh in on it, and a lot of other people should too. Because if you have a vacationer who is hiking in the wilderness and wants to take some pictures, if at some point later on somebody wanted to buy one from them, technically they could be in violation of this.
Right, because it was for commercial use, because they did say there was an exception to hard news. But
well, they said that, but a lot of the definitions, when you start looking at them, are pretty slippery. And one of the problems that they've had is that you have the chief of the Forest Service who has been saying that, oh, no, it doesn't apply to news organizations, and it doesn't apply to this, and it doesn't apply to that. Except that you then have some people on the local level who have been insisting that, oh, yes, it does. So you have, in a lot of cases, left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing.
Well, do you think on commercial shoots, because, if you do videotape and you do things like that, sometimes you can create damage, and you don't know until after it's done. Should there be a refundable security deposit in the event there isn't damage? You return it? Because if there is damage, you can't really go after those people. It's too late at that point.
There are you can see where there could be some initial concerns, and the example came up, for example, of a truck company that makes pickup trucks, and they'd like to do a shootout in the wilderness with their truck up on top of the mountain, and you could have damage as a result of that, and I can certainly see where that would violate the spirit and the rules of what wilderness is about.
Right.
But you could put this in a way of by way of saying that you cannot do anything, that there's already a requirement against bringing really any kind of mechanical equipment back to a wilderness area.
Yeah.
And you could easily say that anything that you do that impinges on, that damages the wilderness area in any way is forbidden, and just leave it at that. Or say that if you do damage the wilderness area in any way, that you have to pay a pretty hefty fine.
I suppose, are they taking comments on this, or is there a comment period?
They are taking comments on this, and they recently extended the comment period because of all the discussion that got started on it.
So that's
running until toward the end of the year.
So people can go to the U.S. Forest Service website and make a comment then?
That's exactly right.
All right, very good. Before we run out of time, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Columbia River Treaty. It looks like the Indian tribes and First Nations have weighed in on this deal. And do you think any new treaty that comes up is going to be as friendly to the Pacific Northwest as the ones have been in the past?
It's hard to know how the details yet are going to sift out. I think that a number of organizations, including some of the tribes, that weren't as involved the first time around are getting more involved this next time around. But there's still a pretty large mix of people, organizations, and possible rule changes that are out there. So it's a little hard to know yet how all of that's going to sift out.
It will be, I think we need to encourage people to look into this Columbia River Treaty, look it up online, and get all the information on it they can, because that is something that is kind of a back mind awareness right now, but this is something that could really affect us here in southern Idaho.
It certainly could. It certainly could. The people in Idaho don't always necessarily think about how they're reliant on and part of the Columbia River system, but they certainly are. Snake River is absolutely a part of that.
Randy, we're out of time. Thank you much, and we'll talk to you next Monday.
Thanks, Randy.
We'll talk to you then.
All right. Thank you, sir. Randy Staples with the Idaho Political Update. Coming up this next hour, we're going to be talking about the beheading in Oklahoma City. Was it workplace violence or was it a terrorist act? We'll be back. Welcome back to Top Story, the third half of Top Story on this Monday.
Third half on the first day of the 5 days of this week.
And September is almost history.
Oh,
Isn't that
October
amazing?
1st is Wednesday, and we're picking a winner lunch that day.
We are, that's right, for a winner for a lunch at the Canyon Crest Dining and Event Center with Kelly and Jill.
That's right. We had a lovely lunch with Frank Pepper last week.
We did.
It was lovely. Very interesting, man.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to another interesting one.
That's right.
If you haven't signed up yet, go to our website, newsradio1310.com, click on Win Lunch with Kelly and Jill, fill in the information, and then wait Wednesday morning during the show, and we'll see if your name got pulled out of the hat as the winner. So, at any rate, it's like 53 right now. It's going to be a chillier day today than what we've been used to.
Yeah.
We're looking at the low 60s today and tomorrow anyway. I don't have a forecast, so I don't know
I
what
missed
it
that
takes
about
me
you
on.
now, Cal.
I know.
You used to have the forecast.
I know.
Now Benito has them, and he doesn't leave them for us.
That's right. And he doesn't share. That's
Benito.
the problem. Yeah, Benito, share your weather forecast at least. At any rate, the phone's ringing. Shall I answer the phone or should we begin our...
I don't know, Kelly.
It's always the
It's
question,
a talk
isn't it?
show. Why
It's a
not? We
talk
haven't
show.
started anything yet. We can always go back to it.
7360300. Top story. You're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning, Kelly and Jill.
Kyle, what are you doing?
Raining. That is the forecast. It's raining.
Raining.
There's water coming out of the sky. It's water.
Is it raining hard?
It's a decent rain. I'm in Jerome right now, and it's coming down pretty good. There's puddles on the street, so it's going to be a fun unload in the rain.
Oh, be careful.
But will it be raining Wednesday? Or better yet, Saturday for bras across the canyon?
Do you have a line in with Mother Nature?
No, I
tell you.
always thought I did, but I learned a long time ago that I really didn't.
No
and
one
that
does.
Nobody has a
No
line
one.
on Mother Nature, and nobody ever will.
I love her. Does that help? No.
I remember those margarine commercials from many, many years ago. It's not nice to fool Mother
no.
Nature.
And then she'd snap the
That's
lightning.
right, and then that's right. There's just very, very few commercials that I remember from the past. And I sit down and I watch TV and I listen to the radio, and you hear all this stuff going in and going out. And the only ones that are any good are the ones that catch your ear and that you can remember.
Remember the old lady with Wendy's commercial, Where's the Beef?
Oh, yes. That was a classic.
Classic.
That was a
classic.
Where's the beef? There was the plop, plop, fizz, fizz, oh, what a relief it is.
Yeah.
Pepto-Bismol.
So
There was
there you go.
A lot of people don't remember this one, but I remember the Pennzoil guy, the old mechanic looking in the hood of a car. Hey, you can pay me now or you can pay me later. You can use Pennzoil now or pay me later with an overhaul.
That's
Doesn't make any
right.
difference to me.
There you go. I'll take your money anytime.
Anyway, I could go on and on about commercials from the past, but instead we have a news issue to talk about that happened Friday. There is no evidence so far to suggest that Anton Nolan, the man who is accused of beheading a coworker in Moore, Oklahoma, Friday, has any formal connection with terror groups. Yet there is also little doubt that Mr. Nolan was deeply sympathetic toward extremist Muslim groups, posting rambling Islamist invectives, photos of Osama bin Laden, and an image of a decapitation to his Facebook. So was Friday's incident the act of a lone wolf Muslim terrorist, or was it the act of an angry employee mimicking what he saw online? The answer could lie in a gray area. This is from the Christian Science Monitor, by the way. The answer could lie in a gray area between these two sets of facts and raise questions about what terrorism actually is. The situation mirrors the uncertainty that surrounded the 2009 Fort Hood shootings, in which Nidal Hassan, an Army psychiatrist who had become disillusioned by America's wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, opened fire on soldiers preparing to deploy, killing 13. The Obama administration classified the shootings as workplace violence, though others called it an act of terrorism. Actually, to consider the 2009 Fort Hood shootings an act of workplace violence is so absolutely, pathetically, grossly stupid that I don't know how anybody could even go there with that. It was certainly an act of terrorism, but our political correctness that we are so enamored with today and so drowning in its vile garbage is making its play once again. And there are going to be people who claim that this thing in Oklahoma City, or in Moore, Oklahoma, was merely an act of workplace violence. I'm sorry, America. We've got to open our eyes and see what's happening.
Well, he just lost his job, which is one thing. But when you say that, I mean, they had the guy who walked into the Holocaust Museum in Washington, shot the security guard, did whatever, and they called him a lone wolf. And, you know, what was he doing it? Against Jews. So, you know, you can be against whatever. Is it really terrorism? I don't know. What's the definition of terrorism? Is there a bigger cell he was associated with? I guess they don't know yet. But, you know, the guy just got fired and came in. And, you know, the thing of it is when you show these videos on TV and all around the world, which I really don't agree with, I don't think we should be showing it because that's what they want. You then you have people who they're copycat things. You do the same thing like that, and he obviously was associated with something. I mean, he was becoming more radical, but does that mean he was part of that bigger group, or just doing it because he thought, well, I'll be like those guys and get notoriety? You know, I don't know.
The definition of terrorism, and I looked this up on dictionary.com, is the use of violence and threats to intimidate or coerce, especially for political purposes. Now that, it seems to be to me a pretty broad definition of what terrorism is. And if that is the case, if that's what terrorism is, then I think that the Anton Nolan guy in Moore, Oklahoma, I think it had to have been had to have been terrorism. What else could it be?
Well, he was just fired from his job, and he went in.
So what?
Well, hello, like that doesn't upset people. So he went in and he decapitated the person. It wasn't like he went in there saying, I'm doing this, you know, because I want all of you. I don't know what his political purpose was.
Apparently he was trying to convert them to Islam, and that pissed him off too. And his Facebook page is ripe with months and months of postings about Islam and how bad America is and how the Statue of Liberty is going to burn.
Well, you know what? There are a lot of unbalanced people out there. You know, do you think it's because of that, or was he fired and then he goes, you know, I'll show them? I don't know. But, and I'm sure they'll find out what his connections are. But, you know, we have all sorts of killings like that in the name of God. What about the guy who killed the abortion doctor in the name of God and saving babies? I mean, you have all sorts of people like that. And, I don't know. Is that terrorism? Was that terrorism?
I think some of them have been arrested on terrorism charges.
I don't know. And I'm sure maybe as they investigate, it will be. But right now, it just happened.
What do you think? 7-3, was it an act of terrorism or was it workplace violence? 7360300. Top story, you're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning. I think all of it's somewhat an act of terrorism. But the question is, unlike the one in the military where he was shouting, Akbar, before he started killing everybody. Did this guy do that, or did he go after the guy that fired him? I mean, that's kind of a different story. But to me, all of it's an act of violence and terrorism.
Well, my question is, and your point's well taken, my question is, if you can shoot and kill 13 military personnel, wound a bunch of others, while shooting your gun, yelling Allahu Akbar and all this kind of stuff, and that's not considered terrorism, what in the world does someone have to do in order to be arrested for terrorism in the United States? That's the question that I have. 7360300.
Well, Allahu Akbar means is God is great. And people say in the name of God, God is great, but that's all that means.
But it's in Arabic, I know, but it's always yelled by the terrorists.
They say God is great. We say God is great too, but you know what? When they shot the abortion killer, what do you think that guy said? Who knows? But he justified it. He's doing it to save whatever, and you know, in the name of God or whatever. You know, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are very unbalanced, and it's not like this is unusual because he's Muslim. It happens in our country. We just had it at the Holocaust Museum. We had the abortion doctor killed. We've had a lot of people here too, but because it's now Muslim or Islam, now it's something else. And there's plenty of Muslims who are very peaceful.
So I ask the question again. What do you have to do in the United States of America in order to be arrested for terrorism? Is it chew your cookie into the form of a gun? Is that what you have to do to be arrested for terrorism?
I think the terrorists that came over here from Saudi Arabia that attacked the World Trade Center, they were a group that was sent over here. I think this guy was just a sympathizer who started to get very...
A sympathizer?
Yeah.
So he can't be a terrorist because he's already
here? What they're
here?
saying is they don't know if he's part of something that they sent him over to do this. I think he's someone who related to it and became crazy and did that.
ISIS said they want individuals to go on a warpath against Americans and do these individual acts of terror. Here's a guy that does it within 2 weeks after the ISIS leader said that, and they're still questioning whether it's a terrorist act. Come on, this is ridiculous. 7360300. Let's try this one here. Top story, you're on the air. Good morning.
Yes, we do not go out there and say God is great and kill people.
Why do you think the abortion doctor was killed? What do you think they said in that?
I didn't hear him say anything, but we don't do like
Why do you think he did that?
The Muzzies are the ones that say that.
What is wrong with saying God is great?
We don't kill people after we say it.
Oh, I'm sure we say a lot of things.
7360300. Top story, you are on the air. Good morning.
Yeah, I think that the people that have been shooting the abortion doctors and stuff like that, they've been calling them domestic terrorists.
They are domestic terrorists.
Well, I know, but that's what they've been calling them. And I mean, you can call this other guy a domestic terrorist. I don't care. But obviously he's doing it because there's been some pictures of his Facebook page and stuff too about how he agrees with ISIS and things like that. So I would say, as a sympathizer to the cause, if he committed that act and cut somebody's head off in that fashion, he was obviously emulating the terrorists. So I would call it an act of terrorism because that's what he was trying to accomplish, was a political statement. It wasn't like, hey, I'm mad at my employer, I'm cutting this lady's head off. It was obviously, I'm an Islamic person. I think that the U.S. is wrong bombing. It might be, the trigger might have been he got fired, and he's like, well, I'm going to go out in a blaze of glory. But that doesn't change it. It's not terrorism. It's just like, I mean, I don't know. It just, to me, it's kind of semantic anyway. But I mean, there's obviously a poor person been killed in a horrible, atrocious manner. But the PC stuff of trying to, what I don't understand is like you said, an abortion doctor gets shot, and if they're in any way connected to any church, it's like thrown out there that, hey, this guy's a Christian, right-wing, crazy nut shooting abortion doctors. But when somebody's Islamic,
was he not?
Well, no, I agree with you. I'm not saying I don't care.
Is that not true?
I don't care if you, but I think the thing that bugs most people and what bugs me is the consistency. If you're going to do it for the Christians, you should do it for the Muslims. If a Buddhist did it, or Hindu, whatever. If anybody's from an extreme group, then if you're going to label them, then label them all. Don't just say, well, we're going to do like right wing, but we're not going to do Islam because we're afraid of them, or.
Well, coming up, we have a list of 10 things you need to do to be considered a terrorist right here on Top Story. Stay tuned. 7360300. 7360300 is the number to call here this morning on Top Story. Welcome back. Friday's $100 instant winning name is Ernest Fife.
Ernest Fife, congratulations.
And your $100 word of the day for today is note.
Note.
Go to our website, newsradio1310.com. Click on Word of the Day. Enter in note, N-O-T-E.
Note to self. Enter
note to
in
self.
note.
That's right. And then listen tomorrow. If you hear your name tomorrow and you play the word today, you win $100.
How easy that is.
It's that easy. Just let me say, too, as kind of a side note to this situation in Moore, Oklahoma, if ever there was a justification for a regular old American citizen to have a gun, this is it. It's just too bad that the CEO of that company didn't blow this guy into the next dimension for his 72 virgins. That's all I can say. It's just too bad because it's going to cost the taxpayer millions of dollars to defend this terrorist. And then you ask the question, okay, what do you have to do to be a terrorist? The Department of Justice and FBI considers you a terrorist threat if you have more than 7 days of food stored, as explained by Rand Paul on the Senate floor. Paul was referring to an official FBI Department of Justice flyer given out to business owners to help them identify potential threats. And recently, federal agents went to food storage facilities demanding customer lists, while citizens were harassed by the government with door-to-door assessments of their preparedness.
Well, that could be like, what, 40% of Twin? I know a lot of my Mormon relatives, they store food.
Yeah.
There you
so
go.
You are a potential
I've never heard of that
terrorist,
one, though.
my friend.
They've gone door to door. Where have they gone door to door?
That was Rand Paul's discussion on the Senate floor. That's
Sometimes
all
he's not the most truthful.
Well, of course not, because
Well,
he's
saying
saying
keeps...
stuff that you don't agree with, so he can't
well,
be a
you
guy
hear
who
this
tells
stuff
the
all
truth.
the time. They're like, where did they go door to door looking for your preparedness? Okay, go on.
Missing fingers.
How come I don't have this?
I don't know. I printed it out and I didn't print you a copy.
Really?
I am sorry.
Are you?
The document referred to by Rand Paul above also claims that if someone is missing a finger or has burn marks, they are more likely to be a terror suspect. I don't know if the Anton Nolan had a missing finger or burn marks or not. Buying flashlights, also from the same official source, if you're buying night vision devices, including flashlights, you should be considered a terror suspect. Paying cash at hotels. Watch out if you want to pay the cash for hotel rooms. The Department of Homeland Security commercial indicates that you are a terror suspect if you do.
I think actually cash for airplanes was a really big clue in 9/11, and somehow they all missed that. And one-way tickets. Remember that used to flag the airlines.
Mm-hmm.
One-way tickets with cash.
The DHS has also launched their citizen spy program for hotels and has sent them hotel protection guidelines, which lists suspicious activities, like persons carrying observation equipment or standing around in the same area. Texting privately in a public place. According to the DHS commercial for their Citizen Spy program, if you're texting while sitting in a public park, but trying to keep it concealed from people who pass by, you should be reported for suspicious terrorist activity. Ron Paul stickers. A 2009 law enforcement report from the Missouri Information Analysis Center labeled Ron Paul supporters, libertarians, and people sharing movies about the Federal Reserve as domestic terrorists.
That was 2009?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We forget about this, see?
Oh, yeah.
We forget about it.
Yeah, okay.
When supporters of a political candidate who stands for peace and freedom become terror suspects, America is in big trouble. Belief in conspiracies. Obama's information czar has identified those who hold conspiracy theories as targets for online cognitive infiltration. Do you question the motives of war? Question the motives of the private Federal Reserve Bank? Question any government policies? Chances are you already have been marked as a suspect. Own precious metals. Despite the fact that the Federal Reserve paper note, known as the dollar, is only sustained by faith, you could now be suspected terrorist if you would like to preserve your wealth with something that holds real value like precious metals. And forget about establishing an alternative currency made from silver or gold like Bernard von Nothaus has, as you may be lumped into the unique form of terrorism. And finally, and now the bonus round for being registered as a potential terrorist, owning guns and ammo. Let's face it, you disagree with the American government concluding with international banks to rob you blind, and you've armed yourself. This is why returning veterans have also been labeled as potential terrorists. They have guns, they know how to use them, and may be angry about the lies that sent them to war. So that's what you have to do to be apparently a terrorist. But shouting Islamic threats and running into your workplace and beheading a woman and stabbing another, oh, I don't know. There's a big question. I don't know if that's terrorist related or not. We'll be right back on Top Story. 7360300 is the number to call here this morning on Top Story. Welcome back. Okay, we got some calls. Let's go to the phones. Top Story, you are on the air. Good morning.
Good morning.
Whoops, let me push the button here.
That always helps.
Okay, now, Top Story, you're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. I called you earlier this morning, Kelly, to look up Greta's piece.
Yes.
Did you find it by chance?
I found something that happened back in June, and the parents weren't sure if it was terrorist-related or not, and that I didn't have time to get into it. I was just looking during a break.
Because didn't they say there were 3 people killed or something? There were more people killed? The thing that you were looking up, Cal?
Yeah, I think there were several people killed.
Yeah.
Okay, well, anyway, I've also seen it in Twin and other things. You know, there's things that you pick up overseas, you learn to look for, and you can call it profiling if you want. But it's still things that are disconcerting. And, I mean, let's compare it to a hate crime. I mean, if it was a black person and a white person, and that white person that decapitated that black person and had postings on his Facebook page about how he hated black people and everything like that, then it would be a hate crime, wouldn't it?
You would think, yeah.
Okay,
they would label it that.
So we can count this as terrorism.
I think
Period.
so. I don't think there's any question. And did you hear my last break where I talked about what you have to do to be a terrorist in America?
I'm sorry, I missed it.
Oh, you missed some good stuff. Well,
I was going to ask him, what things have you seen around Twin that you think are signs of terrorists?
Okay, let's say traditional garb would be worn and stuff. I mean, you have them amongst you in Twin too.
What are you talking about?
And that's the only thing I can say, even though it's not even acted upon, it is still there and it's relevant. And the only thing I could say is you just pay attention to your surroundings. I always have since I got back, because I know there's plenty of refugees here and illegal aliens, and they don't believe everything that we do. I'm sorry, we clash.
Well, I don't think just because you see people in their traditional garb and they're refugees that they're terrorists. I mean, these people are coming here because they've been persecuted in their own countries, and we are a refugee center. So I don't see why. I mean, to me, that's very. I don't know why you would even demonize those people just because they wear their traditional garb.
Well, maybe time will tell. I don't know. But I have some more information here from the New York Daily News on our Mr. Nolan, or Anton Nolan. Months before he beheaded a co-worker at an Oklahoma food plant, a fired factory worker posted on Facebook a photo of a burning Lower Manhattan during the 9/11 attacks. And then he wrote, "Don't y'all know why the eastern part of the world hates America? Everything God says don't do, America does," Anton Nolan noted in the photo caption. "She," meaning the Statue of Liberty, "is going into flames. She and anybody who's with her." The picture and screed are among many chilling posts on the 30-year-old Islamic convert's profile. The most disturbing is a gruesome photo of a beheading. Thus do we find the clear precedent that explains the peculiar penchant of Islamic terrorists to behead their victims. It is merely another precedent bestowed by their prophet, reads the message written above the photo posted in October. Next to a photo of Pope Benedict XVI posted in May, Nolan wrote, "Sharia law is coming."
Okay, so this begs the question. You can find all that on his Facebook. We live in America. We live in America where white supremacists and neo-Nazis marched through Skokie, Illinois, years ago. You couldn't stop it. That's how it is. We live in America. You can say and hate anyone you want. At what point do you then look at someone's Facebook page and arrest them for something they haven't done yet? We all screamed about NSA looking at this, looking at that. When do you sit there? If he hadn't done anything, at what point?
Oh, agreed. But
so,
he has.
I mean,
and
now he has. So
now
then
we're saying this guy is a
back.
terrorist because you can look back on this and you can see it.
But then
it's
when everyone
plain as the
was
nose on your face, but nobody wants to call it that.
But if everyone was complaining about the Boston bomber and how they did data mining with the phone calls, remember that huge uproar? How can they sit there and get to that? If you can actually see if he was getting calls from Yemen or from somewhere else, no, we all complained about that. It wasn't the phone numbers. It wasn't the content. It was the phone numbers. So, you can't have it both ways in these things, but I don't think this guy was actually tied. I think he was more a sympathizer. I don't think they found where he was tied, where they're giving him orders and he's doing it. I think he was mentally imbalanced and he used it as an excuse. I mean, he was Muslim and there's extremists and everything.
See, therein lies the problem, folks. You have this Nadal Hassan who killed our military personnel. But that wasn't terrorism. That was workplace violence. You got this guy who beheaded a gal and stabbed another. That's not domestic terrorism. But yet, if you own a gun and ammunition and you don't really like everything the government's doing, then you are considered a domestic terrorist. So why is it so bass-ackwards here?
This guy is now a
can't we
criminal.
call
He's a murderer. He's a murderer. That's what he is.
And he's a terrorist. We have had a terrorist attack in America, in Oklahoma, on Friday, but nobody wants to say so because it's too politically correct.
I don't think that's it.
It's politically correct explosives is what it is, and nobody wants to go there. 7360300 is the number to call. 7360300, always the number to call here on Top Story. Welcome back, and the folks at Canyon Pond would like you to stop by. They've got guns, they've got camping stuff, they've got woodworking stuff, they've got fishing poles, they've got tools, they've got new and used items on their shelves. They have new items still in boxes on their shelves. And if you need some money, take something down and pawn it. That's what they are, is a pawn shop. They are the newest pawn shop in town, and Dave Hansen and the crew would like you to stop by and say howdy and take a look at the store and just browse around and have fun and
make some money.
Make some money, that's right. And they are located right across from Wells Toyota on Shoshone Street, which is easy enough to find.
It is.
I still got to go by there and get that cross street, the street that they're... It's on the corner.
You don't
can't miss it.
You don't need the cross street. You'll see it. They have a sign out front that's flapping. That's flapping.
They have a big sign.
If you miss that one, then you got other problems.
Canyon
going on.
Pond, and you can tell them that Kelly and Jill sent you too.
Yeah, please do.
All right. So terrorism or workplace violence. 7360300 is the number to call. Top Story. You're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, thank you. I enjoyed listening to what you guys talking about this morning. And one of the things I was thinking is, if the definition of terrorism basically is that if they're taking orders from someone or in contact with other cells, that would mean that Timothy McVeigh was not a terrorist, just merely a murderer, a mass murderer.
Yeah, good point.
Maybe
That's a great point. And as a matter of fact, I think that this, what is his name, Anton Nolan, was taking orders.
I don't even want to use his name. Why are we even talking about his name? Let's just say the person.
Okay, all right. We'll say the terrorist. We'll say
the criminal, whatever.
We got
the killer.
We got this terrorist and this killer in Oklahoma City. It was a week or 2 weeks ago that the leader of ISIS said they want people in America, these lone wolves as they called them, to carry out attacks on their own. And so here you go, fast forward to last Friday in America. You've got this Islamist guy who is mad at some of his coworkers because they wouldn't convert to Islam. He's got all of these postings on his Facebook page.
He was fired also.
And he was fired, but even at that, he did it. He carried out what the leader of ISIS said.
Well, he did
what he did. So even under that definition, this guy would be a terrorist. Don't you think? It only makes sense to me. This guy was a terrorist, but they're dancing around like they're afraid.
Well, I don't know
if
there's different laws. Like once you have a hate crime, there's different punishments, there's different standards. I don't know if it's the same with terrorism. Maybe they want to make sure that this guy is tried and he is convicted. Maybe there's higher standards for terrorism that that they won't meet. It's almost like the death penalty. You have to make sure your standards are going to reach the death penalty phase. Maybe they're saying, we want to make sure this guy is convicted, and maybe that's the difference. I don't know the legal ramifications if it's defined. I know there is for hate crimes is different than normal crimes. Same with, but I don't know if that's the part that if we label it a terrorist act, if we have to hit higher standards to get this guy convicted, just like you would with death penalty. I don't know if that's the case, but.
I don't.
He did a gruesome. Why? Why? That should make sense. Those are the standards for different legal punishments. But maybe that's what's happening. And
7360300, Top Story. You're on the air.
Well, if we go by correctness, isn't it both? It happened at a workplace, so it's workplace violence, and I think it's an act of terrorism. So, just by your definition of terrorism. So it was both. It was an act of violence in a workplace, and it was a terroristic act all at the same time.
Yeah, we have had a terrorist attack within our shores in the last 3 days, and they don't want to consider it that because America is supposed to be safer than it ever has been, which is one of those things that's been shoved down our throats, too. So that's one thing to consider. 7360300, top story, you're on the air.
Oh, good morning, you guys.
Good morning.
Hey, I do think Jill brought up a good point. If our legal system is broken that way, then that's another thing that needs to be fixed in the system. If he's guilty of the crime, he's guilty of murder, it shouldn't matter as far as what we're calling it, whether they can convict him or not. He's guilty, convict him. But
you know what I'm saying? Like there might be a higher standard for that, and that's why
I say if that's true, what you're saying, then that's another thing that needs to be fixed in our broken legal system. If he's guilty, of murder, then he should be convicted. And you can call it whatever you want, but let's face it, if he's guilty of it, he needs to be punished.
Well, I don't think there's any question he'll be punished for murder. I mean, what I'm saying is if they label it something else, do they have to have a higher threshold for a certain amount of punishment?
Well, even if they did, I mean, the evidence is there. I mean, this guy has...
they're building the case, so you'll see.
And look at the things that he was saying. It is just... It's unconscionable to me to say, well, we haven't really found any proof that he's acted on part of a terrorist, Even Nadal Hassan, I mean, for crying out loud, that was workplace violence. They didn't even call that terrorism. We have a problem with calling stuff what it is in this country because of political correctness. And look what it's doing to us.
I don't think that's what it is. They want to make sure they're going to convict him.
It's time for the Huckabee Report, brought to you by Waddell & Reed. And you can hear the Huckabee Report each weekday at this time, brought to you exclusively by Waddell & Reed. Laura Nelson, Josh Funk, and Steve Stanger are the financial advisors at 736-6563. Well, it's on days like this, at a feedlot or a dairy, that you are reminded sometimes of the issue that can be caused by manure.
I thought you were going to say it's on days like this you want to take a nap.
Well,
read a book and take a nap.
But we all know the Stanley & Company has introduced the Lowen Honey Loader, which you can load all types of manure, specifically on days like this would be liquid, okay? And low horsepower requirements, fast loading up 7 miles an hour. They got a fast unloading rear hydraulic gate. It's got everything you need, everything you want on a manure wagon, okay? So you get a hold of Pat Hartzell. He can set you up so you can see one of these in operation on a feedlot or a dairy in case you are considering one. Because there's nothing better than actually seeing one in real-time operation to help you make the decision if you want one of these or not. Pat Hartzell's personal cell number is 280-1167. 280-1167. And he can help you out. He can get you going with the Lowen Honey Loader from Stanley & Company. Maybe you'll decide, no, that's not quite in our future right now, but at least you will know.
That's right.
All right.
And his personal cell phone number. How many people do that?
I know.
Pat, have you lost your mind?
I don't do that.
No. I'm lucky I can even get Kelly's number. It's only because I'm on the show with him. Otherwise, forget about it.
That's right, boy. Now, it's coming up this Saturday.
That's right.
Bras Across the Canyon, 2014. Which is sponsored by Arlo G. Lott Trucking Company, also the South Central Public Health District, Glanbia, and Chick-fil-A has food that will be available there. What you do is you bring a donation and a bra to the Prime Bridge, and then we're going to span the bridge with bras and raise breast cancer awareness. It's part of the Breast Cancer Awareness Month, which helps provide breast health services for those who have no medical insurance or those who might be underinsured in our communities. 100% of the donations will benefit the Wellness Tree Community Clinic, who we will be talking to later this week. So make plans now. It's going to be from noon until about 2 o'clock at the Perrine Bridge, regardless of the weather. All right? If it's nice and sunny, if it's windy, if it's raining, if it's snowing, this is going to happen. There's overload parking in the Johnny Carino's parking lot. Lots of parking around there, so we'll see you this Saturday.
You'll be there.
I'll be there.
It's Yom Kippur,
so
I won't be there.
That's right. You won't be there, but I will be there. I'm big enough for two of us, I guess.
I think so.
Right. Hey,
I'll give you my bra to wear.
Yeah, there you go.
No
I don't
way.
know. Might need two or three to get around me.
I know.
Anyway, we'll see you. We'll see you tomorrow right here on Top Story. Goodbye, Jill.
Bye, Cal.